still see, those are expenses. The good thing is, it's transfers we don't have that are down here. Because look how our revenues dropped. I mean, we've dropped. So if you look at that number, plus kind of how we've reduced our expenses, it's kind of a combination of both things. We were just paying too much out of this. We had too many facilities, we had too many employees. You know, when we went back, there was at times at board meetings where we've showed slides, and a lot when we went through the visionary committee, we were looking at other school districts and the number of employees they had and the number we have. I recently just did a study, you know, as a comparison, because all schools fill out those reports. The number of certified teachers you have. We're right at that 270 range, and Jasper educates the same number of students as us, and they're right at that 240 range. So, but that will help us determine more.
Okay,
Count
so the
them.
1782 is based on the count day. That is, okay. So
Yeah, it is really, and I think everybody will tell you, including the NLEA, and it's really kind of interesting that we kind of start negotiations before, because we build this on, for this budget to work, it's based off of 3 count days. Our count day tomorrow, our special ed count day, and then we have another one in December. Then we have one in February, but then you know, this is next year's budget,
Right.
so it will get us till December,
Right.
but I still don't know next year's September's count day, a year from today. And those numbers go into the budget, so a lot of it is that estimating process. The good news is just watching the revenue and the expenses, and we've started definitely in the right direction.
Do we expect our count to be up since we're through COVID?
I don't think so, you know, no. I mean, I would like, the first number I'd like to see, Wendy, is 0. I mean, it has been a long time.
No, she means like, no, she means, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I mean, break even.
Our enrollment number. Is
Yeah,
what
I'd like to, for
You'd
us
like
to
it to-
keep the same number as
Got it,
last year.
okay.
That's what I meant, break even.
Yeah.
We're probably in that 90 to 100 range is what it's looking,
How many
maybe a
we
little
lost?
more. Yeah.
Okay.
Now, I think the one thing as we look, you know, it's not the 300, or it is decreasing. One thing that we've struggled with for years is the number we graduate and the number of kindergartners we're bringing in. But, I mean, historically, you know, it's been a long time since North Lawrence has broken even. We basically went from 7,000 students in the 70s to, you know, about 3,800 students now. And some of that is, I think it's attributed, you know, yes, partly to a declining population in Lawrence County. Part of it is the birth rate. But I think the biggest thing is, and it's everywhere, because if you look across the state, all school districts are closing schools. I mean, Indianapolis just came out yesterday. I think they're looking at 8 or something, I forget. Maybe they don't know, but it's everywhere. But, you know, we have lots of schools. I mean, as far as last year, and I don't know, we often think of, obviously, we have the 2 charter schools, but yet homeschool is one of the largest numbers that students that historically went to school, that the number that choose to go to homeschool are the charter schools. I think the good thing is we have seen a positive influx back, you know, definitely from one of the schools with many students. We won't really get those official reports, and I will share those with the board. Typically, the state will give that to us because, you know, we know where they all went. There's everybody has a STN number and all that. But we have had Several come back from one of the schools, and I think we'll just continue to monitor. But it looks like, as an estimate wise, I would say we're probably down about 100. You know, I think.
I think, but you remember last year's count looked, I was like right in the middle of
COVID.
That hurt us.
It
in terms
did.
of absentee that day, so.
It did, and a lot of
Yeah.
superintendents across the state and a lot of people complained because, you know, we just didn't have lots in our schools. And obviously, the last 2 years of COVID, I think too, that we've been able to, you know, nobody wants to use COVID as an excuse. And we hoped as we looked back in the rearview mirror that this is what we would see. But when we were dealing with 2 years of COVID, we didn't know for sure, you know, with everything that it was throwing us. And I think a lot of these expenditures and different things, I mean, we know, you know, they went up, they haven't went down, so. Any other questions?
You got any questions? Okay.
Questions, anybody?
There's a blue card, you want me to?
I'm Scott King, I'm at 3120 Greenview Hill Road. I had a few questions about some of the funds. You covered a lot of it now, so I appreciate that. But you said once they approve the budget, it goes to the Department of Legal and Government Finance?
Yeah, local government.
Do they have, okay, have they ever changed the budget or?
Yeah,
I mean,
yes, it's typically, yes.
Okay, is that based just upon certain things being online?
Usually if there is, see, there's an overall tax rate for the county. So your tax rate can't go up. And I don't know specifically how the Department of Local Government Finance could better answer this. But a lot of times, at times, the Department of Local Government Finance, before they issue the 1782, they may contact me, they have not in Lawrence County, but in other school districts, and said, we need to cut $150,000 from your budget. Which would you like it taken out of operations, or where do you want it taken out of? And I believe that is done, Scott, because they can't make the overall tax rate increase for someone, and they do that to balance it out. Because as you know, no one can be taxed more than 1% of their home, 2% of their farm ground, or 3% of their business.
Okay, so I guess, I mean, it does happen.
It does happen.
Okay. So I was looking at education fund, what categories, that's mainly teacher salaries, aides and all that, right? It's mainly salaries.
Well, and I think
What other categories are in there?
anything with our expenses of our schools, anything that touches the kids, the lights that turn on in those schools, lots of those expenses that are directly related to meeting the needs of those kids.
Okay. So do you know what percentage of that fund is salary, wages, and benefits? Just
No.
No, okay. And then operations fund, do you know what percentage of that fund is salary, wages, and benefits?
No.
It's, okay.
And I think part of that, Scott, as we look at that, if you can see, there's been $2.2 million in adjustment.
Right.
So we've really worked hard at adjusting, reducing those expenses in the education fund, and doing our very best to shift those to the operations fund, and we've done that with $2.2 million. I'll be very honest, I don't have all of that, you know, we don't have it coded out, and we don't have that.
Yeah, I just wondered if it was, you know, if there was a typical percentage.
There is a typical percentage. I mean, typically your education fund historically, you know, it was always that 85% mark.
Okay.
I mean, that's typically what it is.
Okay.
And that's why the state came up with the 15% that you should be able to spend towards.
Yeah, so with that in mind, we spoke back in December of 19 about the plans for the consolidation. I remember this, we spoke for a long time,
Mhm.
about different topics. And one of them was that the operations fund should be about 15%, right? And the state, that's kind of state guideline. And if you
Well,
operate.
what it was,
operate
it
outside
was,
that guideline,
it was
it
clearly the state guideline because
Okay.
we were, North Lawrence Community Schools was one of those schools always listed on the state list that we were over the 15%. And we had to do additional paperwork every year we were over 15%.
And so we met again in February of this year and talked about that again. And I believe we'd reduced that, right? And so maybe
This year,
that
we
year,
should
like
not.
last June or July, we were able to report that we were just right about 15%.
Yes, we should not have to do that report. Our name should no longer be on that list.
So then the budget that came out today in the notice of taxpayers, it's got an operations fund of $13,621,000 and a total budget of $49,019,000. And that's 27.8% of the budget. So we now have the operations fund at 27.8% of the budget, and previously it was 21.
Yeah, but we pay employees out of there. So it could still be 85% of the total budget. Salary and benefits comes out of operations and education fund. So to get to that 85%, it would be a portion of both of those funds, Scott, for salary and benefits.
So the salary and benefits portion of the operations fund don't belong in the operations fund?
Yes.
So should we just put it in education fund? When you're talking about the operations funds, by state guidelines, should be 15% of your budget.
No.
Yeah, we just talked about, that in the last, in 19 and just this latest.
What I said was 15%. We should not be transferring more than 15% of the education fund money that the state sends us for state tuition, ADM. We should not transfer more than 15% of that into operations.
So the operation doesn't have to be 15, it's how much you transfer
Correct.
out of education. So then why would you?
And if we do transfer more than that, if we take more than 15% of the money that the state sends us, as far as our education fund money, which is connected to our ADM, if we transfer more than 15% of that, we had to fill out a report.
So, okay, I thought it was the operations fund was at 15%. Why do we have salary, wages, and benefits in both funds?
Because some are directly tied to students and some are tied more to operations, like a maintenance guy or, or bus drivers. and-
Operations person at the active education.
Hi, I have a quick question. I'm trying to get better at the budget and understanding it, and I'm hoping someone can help me understand. The Times Mail article came out yesterday where, Dr. Mungle, there were quotes from you about the budget, and you noted that, it says the estimated education fund amount of nearly 30 million from 2022 was an overestimation. And if I think I'm reading that incorrectly because it looks like it was more.
Now, if you look at the number in the parentheses out there.
Uh-huh.
So like in 2021 or 2020, the parentheses is what we've advertised. So that is just the
Okay.
education fund expenses. But a lot of additional expenses were also being paid out of the education fund for operations. So we've decreased that.
Okay.
But the other thing, Joanna, when you see that budget in the newspaper,
Mhm.
that is merely basically asking for the appropriation or permission to spend that amount,
Okay.
okay?
So that's the one where you
It's-
said
it's-
you typically do it above
Yes.
what you actually need.
Yeah.
So if that was an overestimation, was there more money in the education fund?
No.
Okay.
What I had shared with you, Joanne, or what I shared earlier, was I thought the 2.5 million was added to it from rainy day fund. when
Okay.
Janice did that, when looking at those numbers.
So that, when you were talking about Janice was focused on that number, that's, you mean.
Well, I think it's just was an addition, when we looked at that, it was education expenses, and that budget is just permission to spend that amount.
Okay.
It's not.
It's not what you're going to do necessarily.
No.
And that's why you want it over.
That's why you want it
Okay.
over. And I think some of it can even be in different ways. I mean, there are districts that do their budget. Remember I said we're doing this budget and there's 3 count days we don't know about. Well, what's the other possibility is if we get students, so
Yeah,
they
it's-
even have to estimate higher.
It's gotta be hard to do that guesswork. I understand that, but, okay, thank you, appreciate it.